I stood in my parents' living room with a folder full of bank statements and said the words I had been rehearsing for 3 days. You have 60 days to refinance or I am selling this house. If financial favoritism has ever made you question your worth in your own family, please subscribe and tell me where you are watching from. My name is Claire. I am 32 years old, a civil engineer, and the daughter my parents forgot they had the moment my sister Vanessa smiled at her first birthday party. The day that changed everything was September 12, 2023, when I called my mother from the recovery room after an emergency gallbladder removal and asked for $800 to cover the deductible. She said no, not because they didn't have it, but because they were saving every dollar for Vanessa's dream wedding. Let me take you back so you understand, this wasn't a one-time thing. This was the natural conclusion of 32 years of being the spare daughter. I was 11 years old when I won the regional science fair with a working solar oven I built from scratch in our garage. I remember the smell of singed cardboard and the burn on my thumb from the soldering iron. My parents missed the awards ceremony because Vanessa, then 9, had a dance recital dress rehearsal. Not the recital itself, the rehearsal. When I got home with my trophy, my father glanced up from the couch and said, "That's nice, sweetie." Then he turned back to filming Vanessa practicing her pirouettes in the hallway. I was 16 when I got early admission to a top engineering program with a partial scholarship. We went to dinner at a chain steakhouse. My mother ordered an appetizer. 3 months later, Vanessa made the junior varsity cheer squad. My parents threw a backyard party for 40 people with a rented bounce house and a custom cake that cost $350. I know the exact amount because I saw the receipt on the counter and I did the math in my head while I served punch to Vanessa's friends. I was 24 when I bought my first car with my own money after working 2 jobs through college. My father said, "Good for you, always knew you were the responsible one." Vanessa turned 22 and decided she wanted a quote-unquote starter car. My parents co-signed a lease on a brand new SUV and covered her monthly payments for 2 years. The car cost $465 a month. I know because Vanessa complained it wasn't the color she wanted. So when my abdomen started hurting in early September of 2023, I ignored it. I had a project deadline. I was managing a team of 6 on a highway interchange retrofit, and we were 3 weeks from breaking ground. The pain got worse. It felt like someone was twisting a hot knife just under my ribs on the right side. On September 11th, 2023, at 2:17 a.m., I woke up on my bathroom floor. I had passed out from the pain. My neighbor Emily heard me fall and used her spare key. She drove me to the emergency room. The ER doctor, a woman named Dr. Patel, told me my gallbladder was inflamed and possibly infected. She used the word gangrenous. I was in surgery by 6:40 a.m. The procedure took an hour and 12 minutes. I woke up at 9:15 a.m. with 3 small incisions, an IV in my arm, and a discharge packet that included a bill summary. My insurance covered most of it. I owed $863. I called my mother at 10:05 a.m. from the recovery room. The nurse had just brought me water and saltine crackers. My mouth was dry and I still felt foggy from the anesthesia. I said, "Mom, I just had emergency surgery. I'm okay, but I need some help with the bill. It's $863. Can you help me cover it? I will pay you back by the end of the month." There was a pause. Then my mother said, "Claire, you know we are stretched thin right now. Vanessa's wedding is in 6 weeks and we have already committed to so much." I said, "Mom, this was an emergency. I could have died." She said, "Don't be dramatic. You're fine. You have a good job. You can set up a payment plan." Then she hung up. The call lasted 1 minute and 41 seconds. I know, because I looked at my phone screen for a long time after it went dark. Emily picked me up at noon. She drove me home and stayed the night on my couch because the discharge notes said I should not be alone for 24 hours. That night, while I was lying in bed with an ice pack on my stomach, Emily brought me her laptop. She said, "You need to see this." It was Vanessa's Instagram. She had posted a photo from her bridal shower the previous weekend. The caption said, "Feeling so blessed. Mom and Dad, Thank you for making all my dreams come true. The photo showed a dessert table with macarons, a 3-tier cake, and a champagne tower. I scrolled through the comments. One of Vanessa's friends had written, "This must have cost a fortune." Vanessa replied with a heart emoji and, "My parents are the most generous people in the world." Emily said, "How much have they spent on this wedding?" I said, "I don't know. I haven't been involved." Emily said, "Find out." Over the next 2 days, I did some digging. I called my Aunt Linda, my mother's older sister. Linda had always been the family record keeper and the only person who would tell me the truth. I asked her if she knew what my parents were contributing to Vanessa's wedding. Aunt Linda sighed. She said, "Your mother told me $75,000. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I said, "Say that again." She said, "$75,000. They are covering the venue, the catering, her dress, the flowers, the photographer, and the honeymoon." Your father cashed out part of his retirement fund. I said, "They couldn't give me $800. Aunt Linda said, "I know, honey." I know. I asked her one more question. I said, "Do you remember when I took over their mortgage?" She said, "Of course. 4 years ago, when your dad's contractor business went under, you saved their house." That part is important, so let me explain it clearly. In 2019, my father's construction company lost 2 major contracts in the same month. He had a crew of 8 and he had to let all of them go. The business folded by October. My parents had a mortgage payment of $2,200 a month, and my father had no income. My mother worked part-time at a dental office, making maybe $1,500 a month. They were 63 and 61 years old. They were going to lose the house they had lived in for 27 years. So I stepped in. I was 28, 2 years into my engineering job, and I made decent money. I refinanced their mortgage into my name. I took on the debt. The new payment was $2,050 a month because I got a better rate. I had been paying it every month for 4 years. I had paid $98,400 to keep my parents in their home. And they would not give me $800 for a surgery that saved my life. I sat on my kitchen floor until my legs went numb. Then I stood up, opened my laptop, and created a new folder. I named it Operation Clean Slate. I spent the next week gathering documents. I pulled every bank statement showing my mortgage payments. I printed the refinancing paperwork with my name as the sole borrower. I downloaded Vanessa's Instagram posts about the wedding. I made a spreadsheet with 3 columns. The first column was labeled What I Gave. The second was labeled What Vanessa Got. The third was labeled What I Asked For. The numbers were clean. $98,400 in mortgage payments, $75,000 for a wedding, $863 denied. On September 20th, 2023, I called a real estate attorney named Martin Hess. I had worked with him on a zoning project 2 years earlier. I told him I owned a property that I wanted to either sell or transfer back to the original owners under specific conditions. Martin said, "Walk me through it." I did. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You are well within your legal rights. The house is in your name. You have been making the payments. If you want to sell, you can sell. If you want them to refinance and take it back, you can require that." I said, "What is the timeline?" He said, "Typically you would give them 60 to 90 days notice to allow time to secure financing. If they cannot qualify, you proceed with a sale. If they refuse to cooperate, you can start eviction proceedings, though that is harder because they are family. But the leverage alone should be enough." I said, "Draft the notice." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." That same afternoon, I called my friend Rachel. Rachel was my co-worker, a structural engineer with a sharp sense of fairness and zero tolerance for nonsense. I met her at a coffee shop near our office at 4:30 p.m. I brought the folder. Rachel read through the documents while sipping an iced latte. When she looked up, her face was hard. She said, "They refused $800 after you saved their house?" I said, "Yes." She said, "And they are spending $75,000 on Vanessa's wedding?" I said, "Yes." Rachel said, Claire, you know I love you. You know I think you are the kindest person I have ever met. But if you do not stand up for yourself right now, you are teaching them that you have no value. You are teaching yourself that." Her words landed like a punch. I said, "I am going to give them 60 days to refinance or I am selling the house." Rachel said, "Good. Do you need a witness?" I said, "Maybe." She said, "I am there." On September 22nd, 2023, I received the formal notice from Martin Hess. It was 2 pages long, printed on his firm's letterhead. It stated that I, Claire Donovan, legal owner of the property at 417 Maple Street, was requiring the current occupants, Edward and Diane Donovan, to secure financing and assume full ownership of the property within 60 days. If they were unable or unwilling to do so, I would list the property for sale. The notice included a copy of the deed and the refinancing agreement from 2019. I made 3 copies, one for my parents, one for Aunt Linda, one for my records. That evening at 7:08 p.m., I called my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring. I could hear the television in the background. I said, "Mom, I need you and Dad to sit down. I am sending you an official notice tonight." She said, "A notice? What are you talking about?" I said, "I have been paying your mortgage for 4 years. The house is in my name. I am giving you 60 days to refinance and take the house back, or I am selling it." There was silence. Then my mother said, "You can't do that." I said, "I can. I own the house. Check your email. The notice will be there in 10 minutes. My father got on the line. He said, "Claire, what is this about?" I said, "This is about you giving Vanessa $75,000 for a wedding and refusing to give me $800 when I was in the hospital. This is about 4 years of mortgage payments that you have never once thanked me for. This is about being done. My father said, 'We raised you. We fed you. We put a roof over your head.' I said, 'You did the legal minimum required of parents, and now I am doing the legal maximum required of a homeowner. 60 days. The notice is in writing." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. I sent the email with the scanned notice at 7:14 p.m. My phone rang 17 times that night. I did not answer. Vanessa called 4 times. My mother called 9 times. My father called 3 times. Aunt Linda called once. I answered Aunt Linda at 9:52 p.m. She said, "Your mother called me crying. She says you are kicking them out." I said, "I'm giving them 60 days to refinance. If they can afford $75,000 for Vanessa, they can figure out how to get a mortgage." Aunt Linda said, "I am not saying you are wrong. I think you are right. But are you ready for the fallout?" I said, "I have been falling out my whole life. This time I have a parachute." The next day, September 23rd, 2023, Vanessa showed up at my apartment. It was a Saturday. She rang the doorbell at 10:18 a.m. I opened the door and she was standing there in yoga clothes and oversized sunglasses, holding a Starbucks cup. She said, "Claire, what the hell is wrong with you?" I said, "Good morning, Vanessa." She said, "Mom and Dad are losing their minds. You are going to ruin everything right before my wedding." I said, "I asked for $800. They said no because of your wedding. So yes, this is about your wedding." Vanessa said, "That is different. A wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event." I said, "So is emergency surgery." She said, "You are being selfish. You make good money. They are retired." I said, "They are retired because I paid their mortgage for 4 years. $98,000, Vanessa. Did you know that?" Her face changed. She said, "What?" I said, "When Dad's business failed, I refinanced their house into my name, and I've been paying it ever since. You were busy getting your master's degree that they also helped pay for. You have never asked how they stayed afloat. Now you know." Vanessa said, "That was your choice." I said, "And this is my choice. 60 days. I closed the door. I heard her yell something through the wood, but I walked away. On October 1st, 2023, my father sent me an email. The subject line was, "We need to talk." The body of the email said, "Claire, your mother and I spoke to a mortgage broker. We do not qualify for a loan. Our income is not high enough and our credit took a hit after the business. You are putting us in an impossible position. We are your parents. This is cruel. I replied at 11:32 a.m. I wrote, you had 4 years to thank me. You had 4 years to recognize what I did for you. You had 1 moment to help me when I needed it, and you chose Vanessa's party over my health. The position is not impossible. You can postpone the wedding. You can ask Vanessa to scale back. You can liquidate other assets. You have options. You have 52 days. He did not reply. On October 10th, 2023, Aunt Linda called me. She said, your parents are talking about asking Vanessa and her fiancé to move in with them and help with payments. They want to offer you $1,200 a month if you keep the mortgage in your name. I said, no. Aunt Linda said, I figured. I told them you would say that. For what it is worth, I am proud of you. I said, thank you. That means more than you know. On October 15, 2023, Vanessa got married. I was not invited. I knew the wedding was happening because I saw the photos on Instagram. The venue was a vineyard estate. The floral arch looked like something from a magazine. Vanessa's dress had a 10-foot train. The cake was 5 tiers. I did not feel sad. I felt nothing. Rachel texted me that night. She said, you doing okay? I said, yeah, I am good. She said, want to come over? I said, no. I am going to finish my book and go to bed early. She sent a heart emoji. I appreciated her for not pushing. On October 20th, 2023, my mother called from a number I did not recognize. I answered because I thought it might be work. She said, Claire, please. We need more time. I said, you have 33 days left. She said, we cannot find a solution. You are going to make us homeless. I said, I am not making you anything. I am stopping doing something I should never have had to do in the first place. You are capable adults. You can rent an apartment. You can move in with Vanessa. You can ask her to return some of the wedding money. You have choices. She said, Vanessa already spent everything. The wedding is over. I said, I know. I saw the pictures. It looked beautiful. I am sure it was worth $75,000. Goodbye, Mom. I blocked the number. On November 1st, 2023, my father showed up at my office. The receptionist called me at 2:47 p.m. and said, Claire, your father is here. He says it is urgent. I went down to the lobby. He was standing by the window in a wrinkled button-down shirt. He looked older than I remembered. He said, Claire, can we talk outside? I said, you have 5 minutes. We walked to the parking lot. He said, I spoke to a lawyer. He says, you can do this. He says it is legal. But just because you can does not mean you should. I said, you are right. Just because you could refuse to help me does not mean you should have. But you did. He said that money was already allocated. We had made commitments. I said, and I had a medical emergency. Commitments can be broken. You chose not to break yours. So I am choosing not to keep mine. He said, what do you want from us? I said, nothing anymore. I wanted you to see me. I wanted you to value me the same way you value Vanessa. But I do not think you can. So I am done trying. He said, if you do this, you will never be part of this family again. I said, I have never been part of this family. I have just been paying for it. I walked back inside. He did not follow. On November 18th, 2023, I received an email from a mortgage broker named Sandra Lim. She said my parents had applied for a loan with her help and listed me as a reference. She wanted to know if I would be willing to co-sign. I replied, no, I am the current owner and I am transferring the property. They need to qualify on their own. Sandra replied, understood. For the record, they do not qualify. I said, thank you for your honesty. On November 21st, 2023, at 4:52 p.m., my parents signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb 30 minutes away. Aunt Linda told me. The rent was $1,300 a month. It was smaller than the house, but it was clean and safe. Vanessa helped them move on November 25th, the day before Thanksgiving. I listed the house for sale on November 27th, 2023. The market was strong. I priced it fairly based on 3 comparable properties in the neighborhood. The listing went live at 9 a.m. I had 4 showings by 2 p.m. I received an offer on December 3rd, 2023. The buyers were a young couple with a new baby. They offered $10,000 over asking because they loved the backyard. I accepted the same day. The closing was scheduled for January 10th, 2024. I invited Aunt Linda to come with me. We met at the title company office at 10 a.m. The process took an hour and a half. I signed 9 documents. The buyer signed 14. When it was done, the title agent handed me a check for $147,000 after paying off the remaining mortgage balance and fees. Aunt Linda hugged me in the parking lot. She said, "What are you going to do with it?" I said, "I am going to live my life." I paid off my student loans. I bought a new couch. I opened a savings account that I named Future Claire. I put $60,000 into it and I did not touch it. On January 14th, 2024, Vanessa sent me a text. It said, "Mom and Dad are miserable. The apartment is tiny and Dad's back hurts from moving boxes. I hope you are happy." I replied, "I hope they are healthy and safe. That is all I ever wanted for myself." She did not respond. On February 9th, 2024, my mother sent me a letter. It came to my apartment in a purple envelope. I recognized her handwriting. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it. The letter was 2 pages long. It said, "Claire, I have thought a lot about what happened. I do not think I understood how much you did for us. I thought you were just helping out because that is what family does. I did not see it as a sacrifice because you never complained. Vanessa always needed more attention. She struggled in school. She struggled with confidence. You were always so capable. I think I took that for granted. I am not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I see it now." There was no apology. There was no acknowledgement of the $800. But it was something. I wrote back. I said, "Mom, thank you for the letter. I needed to hear that you see what I did. But seeing it is not the same as valuing it. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be different. I need to be treated as equal to Vanessa. I need my efforts to be recognized, not assumed. I need you to respect my boundaries. If you can do that, we can try. If not, I am okay on my own." I mailed it on February 11th, 2024. She called me on February 18th, 2024. We talked for 31 minutes. It was not warm. It was not easy. But it was honest. She said she would try. I said I would see. We have spoken 4 times since then. Once a month. The calls are short. We talk about weather, work, and Aunt Linda. We do not talk about Vanessa's wedding. We do not talk about the house. It is fragile, but it is real. Vanessa and I have not spoken. I do not expect that to change. My father and I exchanged emails on my birthday, March 22nd, 2024. He said, "Happy birthday, Claire." I said, "Thank you." That is where we are. I still have the folder. Operation Clean Slate sits in my desk drawer. Sometimes I open it and I look at the spreadsheet. Not because I need to prove anything anymore, but because it reminds me that I knew my worth even when no one else did. I also kept one thing from the house. It is a photo from my 11th birthday. I am holding my science fair trophy. I am smiling. My parents are not in the picture. I was the one who took the photo using the self-timer. I framed it and I put it on my bookshelf. It reminds me that I have been my own champion for a long time. If you have ever had to choose between being loved and being respected, I hope you choose respect. Love without respect is just obligation, and you do not owe anyone your peace. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe. You are not alone.